Welcome into the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. I'm Alfredo Brown, joined as always by Dave Kluge, and we're taking a look at the Week 8 waiver wire targets. And Dave, we're going to do this like we always do, sort of a draft style where you're going to get the first pick. We'll go back and forth. And what we're going to do is we have different thresholds of player availability, rostership here, where we are going to, actually this week in round one, we're going to start off with players that are available in at least 60% of leagues, and we'll continue to get progressively a little bit more available as we go on through this. So why don't you kick us off here with your first pick?
I'm giving a 3-for-1. I'm not following the rules, Alfredo. I am breaking the rules. I'm talking about three players that I think should all kind of be picked up.
Okay.
We all saw yesterday, I don't think it's been officially confirmed yet, but it sure seems like Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL. If you
Yeah.
watch that, the way that his knee bent, Kyle Shanahan said in the post-game press conference that they have belief that it's an ACL, and that's something that they have pretty good understanding of diagnosing, with what do they call it? The mechanical testing, I believe, as a pretty high rate, according to Adam Hutchison. So I'm kind of giving you a 3-for-1 here. Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, Jacob Cowing. I think you should probably try to pick all of these guys up. I think Cowing and Jennings are the guys that kind of project as the pure X receiver, which is what Brandon Ayuk's role was. But that's something that Ricky Pearsall can also play. And he can also play out of the slot. And he can also take touches out of the backfield. And this is kind of what we talked about in the offseason with Ricky Pearsall, right, Alfredo? Like we said, he doesn't need one guy to get injured for him to have a role in this offense, whether it was Ayuk or Debo or Kittle or McCaffrey. If somebody went down, there was going to be an opportunity for Ricky Pearsall to get more opportunities. And now there's no Christian McCaffrey, there's no Brandon Ayuk. And we saw in his first game back, he already pulled 5 targets. So all of the underneath stuff and the seam routes to Kittle, they don't work unless you have that threat of the X receiver. So one of these guys is going to have to step up, whether it's Jennings, Pearsall, or Cowing. I think Jennings is going to be the immediate guy that we see kind of getting this work. But if I had to bet on one guy out of these three to have the highest rest of season ceiling, for me, it's Ricky Pearsall, a guy who is oh, I should have studied before the show. Was he a first round pick, Alfredo? Right?
He
I want to say
was. He
pick
was he was a
31.
first round pick,
Yeah,
yes.
pick 31, I believe. Just a very good athlete, a very good receiver. Made a play last year that was maybe the best play I've ever seen in college football. Just look up Ricky
One-hander.
Pearsall catch. Yeah, Ricky Pearsall one-hander. He's an unbelievable talent, an unbelievable athlete, and we already saw him involved in his first game here. So Juwan Jennings, if I need immediate help, I'll sprinkle 15, 20% of my fab, but Ricky Pearsall is a guy that I think you drop 20 to 30% of your fab and don't really think twice about, because in his first game, coming back from a gunshot to the chest, he was already involved, already making plays, drew 5 targets. I think Pearsall has the highest ceiling of the bunch here.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think there's definitely gonna be some value for a guy like Jawan Jennings, and some of those other guys like Jacob Cowing and Chris Conley, who even got some run there as well. But I think that Ricky Pearsall is the guy with the highest ceiling. And it's ironic for us to say that after Jawan Jennings had this crazy game, but that was also
Right.
without Ricky Pearsall being there. And this is their first round draft pick, guy who's incredibly talented. He was one of, if not my favorite receiver in this draft.
Yeah.
Not like ranking him highest, but when he went round one, it was so vindicating to say, okay, the 49ers really loved this guy, that I loved watching the film. And the good thing is that he's not just limited to being a slot guy. I think that people watching football and playing fantasy football get really used to, like, oh, there's a skinny white guy. You're Cooper Cup, right? Like, you've
Right.
seen the memes like,
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
white, you Cooper Cup. Like,
Well,
no,
this guy's
he's
throwing
not.
down like 360 dunks on a basketball court. Like, he is an
Right.
athlete.
Yeah. And it's he played a lot outside in college at the University of Florida. And that's something I really liked, was that he played in multiple different offensive schemes with different offensive coordinators, different colleges, Arizona State, Florida, all over the place. So I think this is a guy, Ricky Pearsall, who's going to be able to hop into the starting lineup, no problem. And Dave, just like you said, a decent performance here in his first ever start, and I only expect that role to keep growing here. So I love him with the highest upside out of the bunch.
One other, I was just in Florida this week, my wife's family
I'm
reunion.
sorry.
They're all from Gainesville, so they are all huge UF fans, and we were watching that game together, and we were kind of talking quite a bit about football. And something I didn't realize, you and I talked about Ricky Pearsall a ton during this spring, and then I think we almost got like a little fatigued talking about Ricky Pearsall by the time like July and August rolled around, because we had talked about him so much. But I thought this was interesting. I was talking to my wife's cousin Ben, who is a huge UF fan, and he said that in Ricky Pearsall's rookie season, they said that he was going to have the number one jersey, and apparently that is like a huge thing at UF, is getting the number one jersey. And he said everybody was kind of like, "What? Like this? this little white freshman receiver is number one. Like, what? He doesn't deserve that jersey. And then he just came out his first game with UF and tore it up. And they were like, all right, that's the guy. And I mean, like, he's just a fun player to root for, really talented. And this is an offense that can really maximize his skill sets. So Ricky Pearsall is the guy that, you know, I think 20 to 30% of fab is reasonable. How much would you be willing to spend, Alfredo?
I'm there. I think I might even go more. I
Yeah,
might go to the 35-40 range. We're Dave, we're getting to the point where it's like each week when we get to waivers, we are basically depending on we're looking for the guy who's going to be a starter based on some sort of season ending injury.
right.
I don't think there's going to be a scenario that gets much better than this, except maybe for running backs. But from the wide receiver standpoint, for a
Yeah.
guy to have the starter ahead of him get injured for potentially the year, go into a very good offense and be in a starter's role, I don't think you're going to get many of those down the line. Like this is the time to spend it. You can't take it with you. I'm good spending 40% on Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah, and we spent a lot of time talking about him, but that's because an opportunity like this doesn't come around all the time. I mean, this is a first
Yeah.
round rookie on a very good offense who could potentially fall into a very coveted role on this offense. You know, crazier things have happened. It might not pan out, but I think the process for spending a lot of your fab to get Ricky Pearsall is well warranted.
Well, welcome to the Ricky Pearsall Variety Hour. If you are watching on YouTube, please be sure to like this video, comment down below some of your waiver wire questions, and be sure to share this. I know we don't want to share it with our league mates, but maybe share it with some of the friends you have that are not in the same fantasy league as you, just so you know they can stay up to date with all their waiver wire stuff. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please take a moment to give this a 5-star review. It helps us out a ton, helps us keep our jobs. And maybe we can do some cool new things in the off season for the fantasy show. Maybe,
Let's
maybe
do it.
not.
Let's do
We'll
it.
see. All right, let's go to my pick. I'm gonna go. You took honestly the guy I wish I could have gotten, which was Ricky Pearsall, but I'm gonna go with Dontayvion Wicks, and a lot of this just simply has to do with how good the Packers are looking. Jordan Love, man, he's playing some serious YOLO ball. Like he's Optimus Jameis. Like that's what Jameis Prime, whatever we want to call him, because he's out here. He throw 13 touchdowns and 7 picks over the last 4 games. Like he just doesn't care. Like he has gone full honey badger mode at quarterback, where he's just tossing balls anywhere and everywhere.
Hmm.
He looks good, but at the same time, like he also just kind of has a certain lack of
Horseshoe.
care. Like, yeah, right. Like he really does not care, like with what he's doing. But honestly, that's leading to some great production for these wide receivers. And I think the toughest thing right now is predicting which one of these wide receivers is going to go off. But what we're seeing now is, and honestly, I'm kind of done with him. Christian Watson is running less and less routes, and he
Hmm.
has less and less participation. Jaden Reed has been up and down as of lately. Romeo Dobbs has had some good games, and what we're seeing now is Dontayvion Wicks is actually taking. He's got a higher target share per game than both Jaden Reed and Christian Watson so far this season in the games where Jordan Love has played. And you wouldn't have expected that. Maybe we're not seeing the same sort of volume on snaps, but on target share, that's pretty telling. And at some point, the scales start to tip where that player, when the quarterback has a preference to Dontayvion Wicks, we're going to start to see Dontayvion Wicks play a little bit more as the season goes on. And it's very similar to the Ricky Pearsall thing, where if even just one receiver misses, all of a sudden the
Hmm.
value for Dontayvion Wicks goes up exponentially. And I think what happened was a lot of people went out, got him on waivers, started him. He had a really bad game, and then they dropped him again, and that's why he's available in 66% of leagues. This is a guy that if you're going to pick him up, just hold him on your roster. He's going to be one of those boom bust wide receiver 3 flex plays. You stash him for whenever, if Jaden Reed or Christian Watson or Romeo Dobbs misses a game, that's when you can plug in Dontayvion Wicks. So that's where I'm at with him.
And man, like I just want to talk about Jordan Love for a second. Like I said, kind of a horseshoe. It's hilarious these plays that you see him make, like where he just launches a ball that flies out of frame. And somehow it's just landing in a receiver's hand for a touchdown. Like,
Yeah.
just some of the craziest throws he makes, but I think the one play that really epitomizes Jordan Love is, like, they need to pick up 5 yards at the end of the game to get the field goal. Jordan Love drops back. He's got a wide open receiver right there at the marker that they need to hit the field goal, and instead he goes, "No, I'm launching this to a covered Dontayvion Wicks in
Yes.
the end zone," like, potentially a game-losing play. Like, they don't need a touchdown. They need 5 yards and a field goal to win the game, and he goes, "Nope. No, Dontayvion Wicks is making a play and just launches it into the end zone." I mean, he's a fun player to watch, and it pains me as a Bears fan, but he is a fun guy to watch, and I'd love having somebody like him on my team. But those types of gunslingers, they make the receivers better, and that's what he's going to do.
Jordan Love absolutely playing like a guy that has no worry about his job security.
Yeah.
Like he knows that he cannot get benched no matter what.
Yeah.
All right, Dave, take us to this is going to be round two for us, where we are looking at players that are available in at least 70% of leagues. So, who's your pick going to be here?
Tyler Goodson, we saw the change last week. We kind of jokingly said last week, like, Trey Sermon is just awful. Like the one guy who was unable to find success in Shanahan's run scheme, and then they tried again. Like he's been retooled and retreaded on multiple teams, and it just hasn't worked out. And after 2 weeks of trying to make him happen in Indianapolis, they finally said, "No, we got to go to Tyler Goodson." And he outtouched Trey Sermon 14-8 on the ground. He scored the lone touchdown. He's clearly the better running back. I don't know what's going on with JT. I mean, a high ankle sprain for a running back is tough to come back from. We might see him back next week. We might see him miss a few more games, but Tyler Goodson kind of sneaks into that handcuff role. He's the RB2 on Indianapolis. So might not be a guy that you can start next week, might not be a guy that you could start at all this year, but you want to roster him the same way that you're rostering any other high end handcuff. We thought Trey Sermon was the RB2. It's obvious now that Tyler Goodson is that guy. So might not be any immediate value here, but definitely worth a stash on your benches.
Yeah, what was it? 2 weeks ago when we talked about Trey Sermon, and I had him on here as a waiver wire target, and I said I don't even feel good about it.
Yep.
I don't
Yep.
even think he's a good player. Honestly, in the future, I'm just gonna stick with what I believe. I'm not even gonna like go out here and say like, hey, just take notice of these. Like, no, forget that. If he's not good, I'm not gonna go out and suggest this to you guys. And to sort of deviate a little bit away, we mentioned the University of Florida. We're talking about the Colts now. Anthony Richardson is sticking out to me so much right now. And this is something, Dave, that should we actually just start to listen to the fans, the college fans, a little bit more? Because there were so many Florida Gator fans that were like, I don't get why Anthony Richardson is getting drafted so high and why people, and I know it's different for fantasy, right? But he does not look good. He's not able to pass the ball. It's just the Colts offense. They beat the Dolphins, so
Yeah.
makes me feel some sort of way, but the Colts offense looks terrible.
I think that's more of a that tells us more about the Dolphins than it does about Anthony Richardson. But I'm not
Mm,
willing to say that Anthony Richardson's story is anywhere close to being over. I mean, this is a guy who only had 13 starts in college. What I believe he had 3 or 4 starts last year. He's had another handful of starts this year. He's still younger than every single quarterback that was drafted this year. He's younger than Caleb Williams, younger than Drake May, younger than Jaden Daniels. Obviously younger than Bo Nix. I think Aaron Rodgers is younger than Bo
everyone's
Nix.
younger than
Actually,
Bo.
I'll have to run the numbers on that one. But there's still a lot of time left with Anthony Richardson, and like I've seen the people on social media saying like they need to go back to Joe Flacco. That's crazy. Like you don't draft a guy fourth overall to give him what 6 or 8 starts, whatever he's had so far in the pros, and then move on. I think they're going to give him a few more years. It's not all that different than what the Bears had with Justin Fields, where you do see the exciting plays and you see the flashes. I mean, you see this guy uncork a ball off his back foot 70 yards through the air, something that no other quarterbacks can really do in the league. So I think there's going to be some patience here and there's going to be some ups and downs, but I think we see them continue to trot him out until at least the end of 2025.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And obviously, with him being so young and having the limited starting experience, he's going to need to get more and more game reps. And I don't know.
You didn't draft Anthony Richardson saying like, this guy's going to be the savior that's going to instantly turn the ship around for the Colts. You drafted him saying if things pan out, he can be one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league, and they're still in that developmental phase.
Yeah, I think the injury with him his rookie season really threw things off, and it maybe bought Shane Steichen more time because usually when you get this offensive guru and you get 2 years into the new regime, if the quarterback's not working out, everyone's gone. But
Mhm.
the injury is, it changed things here, and who knows? Maybe someday Anthony Richardson could be, Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
Nice little renaissance, the Darnaissance. All right. I'm going to give you my pick here in the second round. And I'm also going with a running back who's got some major handcuff upside. I'm going with Ray Davis. He's
Mhm.
available still in 72% of leagues, which I don't know how people are leaving him that available after he had this phenomenal breakout game. I know that James Cook is back to being the starter, but Ray Davis was a top 15 running back in fantasy when James Cook was out. And I get it. James Cook is still dominating the touches more or less, but Davis did see a slight bump in snaps this week. And he ended up with more rushing yards than James Cook. With less than half the carries, he scored a touchdown. I know that this game sort of got out of reach and the Bills were able to just kind of close things out. But that tells me something when the team is willing to trust Ray Davis to close out the game, take the load off of James Cook, take the load off Josh Allen near the goal line. And I honestly think this offense is just going to continue to get better and better. Obviously, they get Amari Cooper in there, and that's going to stretch the field out. It's going to make things a bit more open. Dave, we talked about this since the beginning of the year. I won't be surprised if and when this backfield turns into a 60-40, maybe even closer to 50-50 split with Ray Davis and James Cook being out on the field. I mean, Ray Davis, he's looked good, man. He's
Really
looked
good.
good. This is one of my favorite episodes right now because we're talking about two of my favorite draft prospects from this NFL
Pearsall
draft.
and Davis.
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah. And I like both of those guys too. I mean, Davis is a no brainer. I got to be honest. Like when I was prepping for the show and picking the guys that I wanted to talk about, I just assumed Ray Davis was rostered in like 99% of leagues. Like
yeah.
when I saw you sneak his name on the show sheet, I had to go in the sleeper app and look, and I'm like, wait, why is this guy not rostered in every league?
I don't get it. I don't get it. So yeah, if
Uh,
he's hanging out still on your waiver wire, please, 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 please go stash him.
and having Amari Cooper there, um, that's what they missed, and I understand, like, they thought that they could get rid of Stephon Diggs and put Josh Allen into his Patrick Mahomes phase where he would just be thrown to a bunch of nobodies, but I think that he is best when he can kinda have that one receiver to lean on, and Amari Cooper didn't even know the playbook. Like, did you see the one play where he had to, like, look over at Keon Coleman and, like, ask what his route was before catching a touchdown? Like, that's so cool to see. He's only going to get better, and then you see that once the threat of Amari Cooper is there, then it opens things up for Keon Coleman, who they could just get the ball in his hands and let him make plays after the catch. It's going to open up the run game. We see Josh Allen now, the QB2 behind only Russell Wilson this week. Didn't think I'd be saying that, but I mean, Josh Allen immediately goes back to like elite fantasy form as a 28-point scorer. So I think having Amari Cooper in the picture now is going to make this entire offense better. It's going to be good for Keon Coleman. It's going to be good for Dalton Kincaid. And of course, it's going to be good for Josh Allen and the run game. So a really nice move for Buffalo to kind of push them over the edge.
God, Russ Wilson. Russ Wilson. All right, let's go
He
to the.
cooked.
Yep. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. Let's go to our round 3 here, Dave, where we're going to look at players that are available. Well, I kind of messed this one up as I'm looking down here at the show sheet, realizing, but these were players that were supposed to be available in at least 70% of leagues. So let's go here to round 3. Who are you picking with your 5th pick?
Jameis Winston. I think it's worth the dart throw at this point. We talked so much this year about how bad tight ends have been, but let's talk for a second about how bad quarterbacks have been. Tua got hurt early, and he was drafted to be a plug and play starter. Jaden Daniels is hurt now. Anthony Richardson and Patrick Mahomes have both been terrible, and they were drafted as top 5 guys, and we just aren't getting that production. Justin Fields, the guy that you got off the waiver wire that you felt great about, he's benched now. Sam Darnold is coming back down to earth. Kirk Cousins, Trevor Lawrence, Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, Justin Herbert, all guys that late round quarterback drafters took have all been terrible as well. So why not throw a dart on a guy like Jameis Winston, who's got a 5,000 yard, 30 touchdown season under his belt? I'm pretty sure he's going to be the starter. I know we had DTR was the QB2, but he also got hurt yesterday, and Jameis did come in. And I know people immediately are going to say, well, yeah, he threw 30 touchdowns or 30 interceptions that year, but it doesn't matter. He was still the QB3 in scoring. Like, he is a guy who is just going to chuck the ball downfield, allow his receivers to make plays. So, I'll kind of maybe sneak Russell Wilson in there too, another guy who we saw good production from in yesterday's game. I think we're at the point now where like Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, and Lamar Jackson, like outside of those 4, I think every other quarterback is pretty much droppable at this point. I mean, you can just kind of churn through based on matchups and whoever's hot at the right time. And, if I don't have one of those 4 quarterbacks, I'm going to pick up Jameis Winston and just hold him on my bench, put him in my lineup. Doesn't really matter. The quarterback landscape has been rough this year. And I think that there's upside with Jameis that he's worth the pickup. And again, I'm talking like 5-10% of your fab. You're not making a huge splash on Jameis, but pick him up and see what happens in this offense.
It's crazy looking at the leaders right now in fantasy football
Oh
points
yeah.
for quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield is at quarterback 3, rookie Jaden Daniels is at quarterback 2, Geno Smith is at quarterback 6, Brock Purdy quarterback 7, Justin Fields, who's not even a starter anymore, is quarterback 9, Bo Nix is quarterback 13. Wow. It's
And it
insane.
gets
Patrick
weirder
Mahomes,
when you get
Patrick
into the
Mahomes,
20s. Yeah,
quarterback 22, Patrick
right.
Mahomes, quarterback 26, Anthony Richardson. Obviously, there was
Mhm.
some games missed, but yeah, this is it's weird territory for quarterbacks in fantasy. That actually kind of leads perfectly into the guy that I'm going to pick here. And you went with a quarterback, Jameis. I'm going to go with a quarterback as well, Drake Maye, who's available in 75% of leagues. And Dave, for me, this is one of those times where just once again another prospect I really liked. I'm just going with talking about a bunch of rookies here that I really liked, but Drake Maye is legitimately good at football,
Mhm.
and it's crossing over and mattering. It matters.
Mattering. Yeah,
Mat-
it
mattering.
matters.
Mattering. It just sounds weird coming out mattering for fantasy football, and I don't really care about how bad the supporting cast is around him. I think that it has made Drake May like really play at the highest possible level right now, where he can't just go and rely on one single target or one single player. He's actually having to make it work with everyone. He's out here throwing touchdowns to KJ Osborne and Hunter Henry, who we thought was cooked, and now Hunter Henry looks like a waiver wire pickup at the tight end spot. But that what stood out to me, Dave, and I saw this on the Twitter machine, is that Drake May, we've already seen 5 touchdowns, and excuse me, in this last wow, let me start that again. Over these last 2 weeks, he's thrown 5 touchdowns and rushed for 56 yards. Now, there's only 2 QBs since the NFL merger that have thrown for 500 plus passing yards and 5+ touchdowns through their first 2 games. Dan Marino and Drake May.
Wow.
Now, I'm not sitting here and saying that that's where Drake May is going to be, but oh my God, if that's not a good sign of things to potentially come for Patriots fans. And it's not just like that he's out there winning games and it looks good. Or I think there's a big difference between CJ Stroud last year, who was winning games and breaking records, but he was just kind of decent for fantasy football. It wasn't anything amazing. Drake May right now, Dave, is quarterback 6 in fantasy over his first 2 starts these last couple weeks.
Mhm.
It's all translating over. So I do know that there's going to be a couple of tough matchups in weeks 9 and 10, but week 8 he goes up against the Jets, who Russ Wilson just crushed, and then he's got a good schedule after that where he's going to go up against the Rams, Dolphins, and Colts, all 3 very beatable defenses. I'm not just stashing and streaming Drake May, but I think I'm picking him up to be my starter. And this is one of those guys that I'm willing just to plug in. And if I did go and draft someone like
Patrick
let me
Mahomes.
look at it.
Just say
Yeah,
it. Say it.
Patrick.
We got it out on social media last week when I said
I
to
don't think
drop Patrick Mahomes, and I got a lot of smoke for it, but I'd have no qualms about
I would
dropping
try to
Patrick
trade him.
Mahomes for. Yeah, I mean, if there's a market for it, but I don't know if there is. He's been terrible. Like you said, he's QB 22 right now. Like in a short, if you've got shallow benches, 5 to 7 bench spots, I would just flat out drop Mahomes and pick up May and not think twice
Yes.
about it.
Yes, and I think that if it's you and me, or if it's someone who's like really locked in on playing in their league, they're saying, "No, I don't want Patrick Mahomes." But there's always that person in the league that's like, "Oh my God, Patrick Mahomes, you're willing to give him to me for just this running back 2 on my team? Okay, yeah, I'll do that trade immediately." And there's still the person who shows up with a magazine and they're drafting quarterback in the first round. I'm telling, like, I know that exists in fantasy leagues, so that's where I would be with that. Drake May, though, I think is a phenomenal waiver wire add this week.
Yeah, I agree. And there are, I mean, we're at the point now where we've seen a lot. I talk about Jameis Winston being a pickup. You talk about Drake May. We mentioned Russell Wilson. Caleb Williams is still available in a bunch of leagues as well. I think we're at that point now where it's basically the midway point of the fantasy football season. If you're still holding on to the draft value that you got on Patrick Mahomes and Anthony Richardson, you got to reassess that. I mean, like it's sunk cost at this point to just continue putting Patrick Mahomes and Anthony Richardson in your lineup. And I held on to the Anthony Richardson flag a little bit too long when we did our rest of season quarterback ranking show, and I regret it. We're just not seeing what he's doing translating to fantasy production, and there's just better options out there. We're seeing this incoming class of rookie quarterbacks has looked fantastic. Whether it's Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Bo Nix, even, who has some sneaky rushing upside, are all guys who realistically are going to be inside the top 15 in weekly rankings going forward until we have reason not to rank them there.
Bo Nix doesn't make any sense to me for fantasy football, sure, because he's running.
Right.
Did you? I mean, you saw the pass heard
He's
around the
not
world.
he's not great. Yeah.
The pass where he's got 2 wide open
And he
receivers and
put it right
manages
in
to put the
between
ball
them. Yeah.
exactly where neither of them can get it.
Yeah.
It's
Split the
there's very
uprights on
few,
that one.
dude, there's very few times where I'll look at a play and be like, I think I can make that throw. That was one of those where I was like, I think the average person could maybe even make that throw. Like anyone who's played football might have been able to make that throw. I'm probably talking out of my ass right now, but sorry, Joe. But yeah, it looked like that. All right, let's go to our last picks here. These are players that are available in roughly 90% of fantasy leagues. So Dave, kick us off here with pick 7.
There's a lot of guys I think, and we always kind of talk about the honorable mentions, and there's some other guys that I'd like to discuss later. But one guy again, going back to the Browns here, I just talked about picking up Jameis Winston, and I think Cedric Tillman is also worth a look. It's no surprise he had 12 targets yesterday. I'm sure anybody can look at that box score and is going to be pretty intrigued by that. First game without Amari Cooper, we got a pregame report that he would see a larger workload, and then he just went right into Amari Cooper's um, role and pulled 12 targets, which is, better than we've seen Amari Cooper do in that role this year. He was a third round pick last year, didn't do much as a rookie, but he's a really fun player. He excels with his ball skills. He's not the best athlete in the world, but great at contested catches and just tacking the ball at the catch point. And if you think about a guy like Jameis Winston, as I said, he's a guy that's not afraid to throw the ball up there and let his receivers make plays. We can kind of be looking at like a diet Mike Evans from 2019 type of season here from Cedric Tillman, where Jameis Winston's just going to throw the ball up to him and let him make plays on the ball. So, not a guy that I'm saying you need to get in your lineup this week or that you need to pick up, but especially in deep leagues, 12, 15% of your fab to pick him up and see what happens. I have long not been a believer in Jerry Jeudy, and I think that people look at the draft capital and all those sorts of things and assume that Jerry Jeudy is going to be the wide receiver one here. But it would not surprise me one bit if Cedric Tillman ends up being the wide receiver one on this team for the rest of the season. Elijah Moore, fun prospect, showed some flashes as a rookie, but he ain't it. Jerry Jeudy, another guy, he's going into year 5 now in the NFL, hasn't really done so much so far. I think Cedric Tillman here is the guy where if it comes together, he could easily be the wide receiver one for the Browns for the rest of the season.
Right now, they're kind of the Cleveland might as wells. Like that's
Yeah.
how I'm looking at every single player. I say, oh, might as well add them and see what happens, right?
We kind of know
It's
what every team is at this point, except for the Deshaun Watson-less Browns. We don't know what they are, so let's make a bet on the unknown.
with that being said, they have to turn to Jameis at quarterback, right? Like they don't keep throwing out Dorian Thompson Robinson at quarterback, right?
Yeah, I think so, and I
Man,
think again, like let me fit on my tin hat really quickly. I think the reason they made Jameis the emergency quarterback is because fans in Cleveland were starting to sour on Deshaun Watson, and they didn't we want Jameis
sorry.
chance out there, so they make him the emergency quarterback. Fans aren't going to be clamoring for DTR the way that they would be for Jameis, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like we talked about early in the season, right? Where like Ronnie Rivers was the RB2 getting the RB2 touches, but we said if Kyron Williams goes down, it's going to be Blake Corum. I think it's kind of the same thing here where like DTR was the QB2 on the depth chart, but when Watson goes down, I think they go to Jameis.
Ronnie Rivers still not a real person. I've developed some really weird ops on this show. Tyler Conklin and Ronnie Rivers, who I have zero distaste for these guys. I think they're probably great
It's,
people,
yeah.
great athletes. I don't know why. It's
Tyler
not a
Conklin
favorite.
touchdown yesterday. It's inevitable.
I'm sure that did happen. I'm sure it did. All right, I'm going to give you my last pick here. Kendre Miller, running back for the New Orleans Saints, available in 89% of leagues, almost 90. I kind of bent the rules a little bit, but he looked really good in his season debut. And it feels like we've just been waiting about 6 years for Kendre Miller to finally play fantasy football or just play football, excuse me. And we finally got it. Gets 37 yards on 8 touches, more snaps, more opportunities than Jamal Williams. And Dave, this was crazy. Dennis Allen actually said he was impressed,
Whoa.
but then he does the incredibly backhanded thing. So this is the full quote. Dennis Allen on Kendre Miller says, "I thought he played well when we handed him the ball. I thought he did some good things. I wish he would have caught that one ball over the middle, but I was impressed with what I saw out of Kendre. I think that's a guy that can help." That is the most glowing response he's given about pretty much any player not named Taysom Hill on
Right.
this roster. That's poetry for Dennis Allen. That's a love letter. That's a sonnet to Kendre Miller. And I think I'm doing a little bit of like the narrative-y stuff here and trying to jump ahead, but this is what we kind of have to do when we get to mid-season form here. Alvin Kamara is almost 30. The Saints can save 19 million against the cap by cutting or trading him going into next season. And this could be one of these things where as we get later into the year and the Saints are not contending for a playoff spot, we could actually start seeing a lot more Kendre Miller. And I would not be surprised. This is a team that they want to see what they have in the guy, right? Like, sure, the whole thing is Dennis Allen saying that Kendre Miller's never been healthy. But if you have him healthy, I would not be surprised to see him get out there more. He's looked good. And I just don't see how Alvin Kamara is going to keep this up with 20 touches per game, Dave.
Yeah. Did you see the kind of source off on Twitter over the last few days where some guy said,
And getting
Alvin Kamara
traded.
was getting a trade, and then he quote tweeted that and said incorrect. And then
Yeah.
Nick Underhill, who is a very reputable reporter for the Saints, said, if anything, Alvin Kamara would like to find a way to finish his career here. And then he quote tweeted that and said correct. But also, we know this is a business. There's a lot of guys who have dreamt of finishing their career with a team and then get traded midseason. Um, Kendre Miller's a guy that I didn't talk about a ton this offseason. Loved him last year, and it was one of those like the injury happened, and injury to a rookie could easily just derail the entire season when you're missing out on those camp reps in the preseason. But huge fan of the talent. Like what he did at TCU was a ton of fun. Just great contact balance, great burst, really strong runner. We haven't really seen much at the NFL level yet, but all we really have so far at this point is his college career to look back at, where he was a very dynamic running back who can kind of do it all. And at the end of the day, I want to bet on talented players, and Kendre Miller's a talented player. We don't know how this running back room is going to look, but trades, injuries, there's so many ways that it could shake out where all of a sudden Kendre Miller could be the RB1 here. It's a solid bet.
I'm looking at the Alvin Kamara contract right now. Dave, he would have a $29 million cap hit next year.
That's
Alvin
a lot
Kamara
of
on the
money.
Saints. That's a
That's a lot of
lot
money
to
for
be
a
paying
running
a
back.
30-year-old running back on a team that's not really competing 10% of their cap. That's nuts.
I will say
Absolutely
though,
nuts.
man, it's like you always say this about players who have been with the team for so long. Like imagining Austin Eckler in anything besides a Chargers jersey is weird. I cannot imagine Alvin Kamara in anything besides a Saints jersey. Like it's just such a weird thing to try to even think about. Like he just embodies everything about that city and that team. It wouldn't surprise me if he ends up restructuring to stay there, but like I said, it's a business and crazy things happen, and they might try to find a way to get out of that deal. I did hear the rumors about the Chiefs and Alvin Kamara. Can't help but think about how fun that would be. But yeah, again, we're kind of talking in circles here. Kendre Miller, the real guy that we're talking about here, is a very good player, and you want good players on your team. Kendre Miller is absolutely worth a pickup.
Yeah, I think all these handcuff running backs, if there's a guy who's just one injury away from being a constant starter, they need to be on your rosters.
Yep.
Let's go into the other players, the honorable mentions, so to speak, here, other players to potentially add. I'm going to list them off here, Dave. And if you have one that stands out at the end of this, let me know. We got Clyde Edwards-Helaire for the Kansas City Chiefs, Jalen Naylor, wide receiver for the Vikings, Troy Franklin, wide receiver for the Broncos, Trey Tucker, wide receiver for the Raiders, Van Jefferson, wide receiver for the Steelers, Cedric Wilson, wide receiver for the Saints, Hunter Henry, tight end for the Patriots, Jatavian Sanders, tight end for the Panthers, Noah Fant, tight end for the Seahawks, Cole Kmet, tight end for the Chicago Bears, Russell Wilson, quarterback for the Steelers, and Caleb Williams, quarterback for the Bears. Anyone that stands out there, anyone that you want to add to this list?
I already talked about how the quarterbacks have been really, really rough this year, and I think Russell Wilson is worth a pickup. I mean, he's got some good playmakers around him. We saw multiple QB1 finishes from Justin Fields in this offense. Russell Wilson's doing what he's supposed to, man. He's getting the ball in George Pickens' hand, and Najee Harris looked amped up last night, like running like I haven't seen him run since college. And they're getting Darnell Washington in the mix and Calvin Austin in the mix. Like there's good weapons in this offense. And we saw that offense take a big step forward with Russell Wilson, who we've still got a few guys left to play tonight. We got that Monday night doubleheader, but he's currently the QB1 in the week, 32 points. In his Steelers debut, he's still got that sneaky elusiveness where you see a pocket collapse around him and you expect a sack, and then Russell Wilson just pops out of the pile and takes off running. Um, I know there's like a lot of memes and jokes about Russell Wilson, and a lot of people see
Rightfully
what
so.
he did yeah, rightfully so, sure. A lot of people see what he did in Denver and just love to say that he's washed now. I'm not really buying it. I think that he still showed some flashes in Denver, and he did have a couple errant throws last night, but he also had some really nice downfield throws. He had a great touchdown to George Pickens. I think Russell Wilson is worth a pickup. Not much different than what we talked about with Jameis Winston and Drake May. Just if you drafted one of these quarterbacks highly that isn't working out for you, Russell Wilson could be that band-aid.
It seems like the offense there is really fitting him, and I don't think that we've actually seen a lot of this for Russ where he's had to or where he's actually been able to play in a structure that requires a lot of this play action rollout. And that was something that Arthur Smith has always done and incorporated into his offenses. And it seems to fit Russ pretty nicely. So I wouldn't be surprised if Russ does end up looking good, but we're also at the point in his career where it wouldn't surprise me if next week Russ goes 0 touchdowns and 3 picks. Like it's
Right.
none of it would shock me anymore.
I think this is a better offense though for us. They let him play a little bit more free than Sean Payton did. Sean Payton's whole offense is just timing routes and hitting those receivers across the middle of the field and the short little dink and dunk games. Or Tomlin is going to let Russ on a little bit of a longer leash. He's going to let him take those moonshots downfield, and he's going to let him scramble around a little bit more. I could see a Russessance. Did I do that right? Is that a good one, Alfredo?
B minus.
All right.
B minus. I'm gonna go with Hunter Henry from this list,
Yeah.
and a lot of it has to do with what I was saying about Drake May. And I don't know that we're necessarily going to know which wide receivers are playing well. Jalen Polk looks like he's really going to struggle, and Gerard Mayo was out here throwing shade at his rookie, which I don't know if you saw that, Dave, head coach for the Patriots.
Bold move.
That's weird vibes. Like
Yeah.
I'm used to coaches putting the blame on themselves, not on their rookie wide receiver. But I think that the one thing we're going to see for certain is Hunter Henry has been getting targeted. I'm looking at it right now over the last 2 weeks with Drake May. Well, granted, small sample size. He's a tight end 3. He's right up there with George Kittle and Brock Bowers. He's had 14 targets over the last 2 weeks and a touchdown. It seems like he's going to be a favorite of Drake May going forward. And if the schedule continues to look good for Drake May and for the Patriots, and they're going to be trailing in as many games as they are, yeah, tight end sucks.
25% target share in the games he's played with Drake May. That's nice.
Tight end's awful. I mean, put that on repeat. Tight end's awful once again. It, Dave, I'll list them off to you right now. You ready? George Kittle, Brock Bowers, Tucker Kraft, Cole Kmet, Kyle Pitts, Hunter Henry. Those are your top 6 tight ends.
Yeah. I mean, Hunter Henry, he did it last year too. Like he quietly stuck in as a top 12 tight end last year. It seems like this guy's been in the league for like 15 years and he's still relatively young. Like he's been around forever. Didn't he used to play with Antonio Gates, right? Like that was when Hunter Henry first came
Yes.
in. It was like he was kind of like the heir apparent for Antonio Gates. And yeah, he's been a solid tight end, and this is a tight end friendly system that they're running in New England, and Drake May is doing what's asked of him and making the throws. Hunter Henry is absolutely worth a pickup.
Well, there you go. There you have it. We got our week 8 waiver wire targets. We got a whole bunch of honorable mentions on here as well.
Before
Dave
we
and I
sign
are gonna
off, Alfredo, real
oh,
quickly, I
oh
do want to
yes,
say
dude.
this weekend, Joey Wright came to hang out with me in Florida, as we've already discussed. Alfredo, he's a much better friend than you. He made the trek, and you
Cool.
did not. But he brought his 2 daughters with, Tristan and Eliza, and they said that they like to watch this show. And I just wanted to say hi to Tristan and Eliza, and thank them for tuning in, and also say how important it is that we have young women playing fantasy football. That is so cool. Wish you guys the best of luck this year. Hope you guys can win your fantasy football leagues and keep playing next year and learn more and more about the sport, because it is very important to have girls like Tristan and Eliza playing fantasy football.
Dave, you big softy. I loved it. It was beautiful. Not going to add anything to that. It was perfect. Girls, I hope you're watching. Thank you for watching. And to everyone else, we always want to thank you guys for watching and listening all the way through. Dave and I are going to be back later this week. We're going to be back on Wednesday, right, Dave? We're coordinating here
Wednesday.
live. We're back on Wednesday. That's going to be the schedule going forward. We're going to do Mondays waiver wires and then back on Wednesday each week. And then, of course, Thursdays, we give you our starts of the week. So for myself, for Dave, thank you guys for watching, listening all the way through. We'll see you next time. Adios.